Kia ora guys, welcome back to another Train Like a King podcast episode. In this episode, I'm going to be recapping the New Zealand Long Distance Nationals in Tairāwhiti, Tūranganuia, Gisborne. And it was awesome. It was an awesome weekend away with the whānau, with the family, with the wife. She came down and she paddled. Overall, it was a really cool trip. Hadn't done much racing since Hilo, as just a busier year, haven't been able to get over to, I've had to say no to a lot more racing. So when there's a long time or a space between races and I haven't been able to gauge my performances against any other paddlers or anyone else, you can get, I get kind of nervous, right? In terms of like, am I ready? Am I ready? Or sometimes I, lose trust in how much training I'm doing. And yeah, if you just, sometimes I went into the event thinking, am I race fit? Like, I know I'm putting the training in, but am I race fit? Because that's another element of performance, is just being relatively race fit, because the more racing you do, the more experienced you are. But obviously I've done a lot of racing in my time, so just gotta sometimes trust in the training, trust in the experience, and just make sure that you turn up prepared. I think that's the main thing. Turn up fit enough, to at least give it your best shot, and not be limited by your physiology, whatever it is. So how did we do? So originally the V1s and the OC1s singles races were meant to happen on Thursday before the 6-man events. However, due to high winds, they changed that, which was a good, smart idea, because the wind was offshore, really strong. I still got out there for a paddle on a Thursday and did a little bit of a downwind and a paddle back into it. And that was only 10 Ks. However, if it had been 16 kilometers, it would have been a struggle out there. A lot of people would have struggled in that level of wind, especially when you're doing a loop course. It's fine if you're doing A to B downwind, but that wasn't an option. And yeah, it was a good, smart decision on their part. I mean, if the wind was the other way around, coming back in, similar to last year, then hey, there might have been some complaints about not allowing us to get out there in the surf and stuff. But yeah, no, I think it was a good, safe decision to change it. And so therefore, for me, Saturday was the first race for the Open Men's 6-man with Herbert's on tour. And subsequently, the singles happened the day after on Sunday. So managed to get out there on Thursday, have a bit of a paddle, rest Friday while the women were racing and juniors, and then raced on Saturday. So it worked out well, and gave us an extra day, at the Wakahama Nationals, which was good. It was, like I said, it was a good time away, especially I went down with parents and wife, and it was a bit of a holiday, to be honest, a little bit of a getaway, which was cool. Stayed in an Airbnb, and yeah, no, it was cool. Awesome. Saturday, Open Men's race. It was a very competitive year, very competitive field out there. With the likes of Vakamanu, Piniola, Buti Boys, Herbert's on tour, and a lot of Makoha, a lot of good teams with quality paddlers, turned up. And so I knew it's always going to be a a challenge. Everyone's pretty keen on the long distance nationals in general. But I just knew that there were paddlers who were putting in the time. So I know paddlers from Whakamanu who recently gone to Hawaii to race, so they were coming pretty ready. I know that paddlers in Buti, like Ash Roosendahl, who has been getting on the water a lot more than usual, they're coming ready. Piniola always, they work in the dark, and they stay ready too. The Herbert boys, we've got some young talent, Kai Tawhiti and a few of the boys putting in some good work. So yeah, it was pretty. I knew it was going to be a tough race. How the race unfolded, Whakamanu got the lead quite early, and basically held it for majority of the race. Herbert's on tour. We were sitting in second majority of the race, pretty much all the race, trying to close that gap on Whakamanu, trying to pick our time to catch up and try and improve our placing. And there was a little bit of argy-bargy at the beginning of the race, paddlers teams trying to, establish their position. However, it wasn't until the final headwind where I think, even for myself, kind of started to not have that, you always kind of want to save a little bit for a final push and try and close the gap and take gold. That I know that happened for us in a previous year in Paihia, where Peniola had the gap, probably more than 50 meters or so on us, and we knew it was the final lap, so put the hammer down, and we caught up and managed to win that one. This year couldn't quite put the hammer down. We kind of just stayed at our consistent speed that we had for that last headwind, and unfortunately Peniola and Buti boys both were charging in that last final headwind and passed us and just kicked us off the podium, which is unfortunate. But I mean, like I said, every day on the water is a good day with the brothers. We had young Kai Tawhiti in there, not his first time paddling with us, but it's the more experience for him, the better. He did amazing in the singles as well, so it's cool to see that young talent coming through. And yeah, I mean, any day, it's just awesome to be out there and in a challenging field, because everyone is excited to race for their club, for their local team, and that drives performance overall. It pushes everyone to be on their A game. So I know next time, the next nationals, which is long distance nationals, it's not that far away. Everyone's going to come, prepared. So yeah, that was Saturday. That was awesome. That was 24 kilometers, and yeah, 3 laps of an 8K course, I believe it was. Following that was the Sunday racing for me, and this was the singles, both the V1 and the OC1. Now, the way that we do it in New Zealand is that we do the men's V1 with the OC1, women's OC1 in the morning, and then about an hour and a half later, we do the men's OC1 with the women's V1. So that just makes it better for canoe numbers, so that it's just an easier way to do things, but it works out well so that we can actually do both races, if you dare. Now, these are both 16-kilometer races, and so if you choose to do both, you're basically doing 32 kilometers, and which is not a crazy amount. I mean, that's the same amount as the Buti Memorial Race, so it's a good it's a good way to get a bit of extra training in. However, what makes it a little bit more difficult, I'd say, is that not everyone does both. And so you're looking at 16-kilometer pace for both. And I mean that by someone might not race the first 16 kilometers, so they're relatively fresh for the second one, and they can hold a better speed for that particular amount of time. So I view it as a really good challenge, like, can you maintain, a decent average speed, not just for the first 16Ks, but that second one as well. So the first one, the V1 race, that was, I was probably most nervous about that with all of the talent in there, the likes of Casey Ngataki, Ash Roosendahl, few of the Wakamanu boys in there. Who else was in there? We had some young talent. Man, even Rehutai had a amazing performance in his 8K. I think he was like in the top 5 finish when he finished his 8K. So it was there were plenty of paddlers in there that who had been preparing, and it was strong. But I knew Casey was gonna be a strong competition, just like Paihia a few years ago. And it pretty much almost was a replica of Paihia. Like, I gotta say, Casey came out really strong and set a pretty strong pace, right? Like, so I tend to kind of not go too hard at the start and just get a little bit of feeling. But there was a point where I realized, I better not go too easy, otherwise Casey might establish a really strong lead. And so when I had an opportunity, I kind of try to close that gap and then gauge off Casey's speed. Now, the speed that Casey was setting, it's not an easy pace, eh? It's quite demanding, and I was trying to match it, but it wasn't easy matching it. I can tell you, like, it's over the threshold that I would normally work at, right? So I had to be careful not to blow up, which was, for that first lap was kind of happening. You could see the exchange of leads and all of that happening. You're kind of in the hurt locker for a bit. You have to be. And I think it relates back to like your glycogen stores, which is your carbs in the muscle. This is the fuel that is responsible for high intensity, right? And Casey is a high intensity trainer, right? Because he's in the sprint kayaking environment. So they do majority of their training is high intensity. It relies on carbohydrate. It relies a lot on anaerobic capacity as well. So there's no surprises that he would be super fast in that first 60 minutes of a race like this. However, where I tend to prosper a little bit more in distance racing is probably beyond that 60-minute mark, where glycogen stores start to deplete and more reliance on the aerobic, or even more like fat oxidization. This is probably where I can, start to shine a little bit more in the race, in terms of I've probably got a lot more paddling time under my belt for the distance races. So the little adaptations in the muscle in terms of being a bit more efficient over the longer distance, that's where things come into play. So I kind of work that into race strategy a little bit, but it just kind of happens, right? Like, if you're battling with someone and you're just holding it until someone gives, and when you start to see signs of, speed dropping, or maybe energy levels are starting to get low, then you can kind of start to put put a little bit of pressure on and see how they react, right? So in the second lap, I decided to put a little bit of the hammer down soon after we started the second leg. And as I was doing it, I was a little bit cautious because I was like, "Ooh, am I going too early?" And, because basically the first lap was me trying to hold on to Casey. The second lap was, okay, my turn now, and let's see if Casey can hold on. And I was afraid that Casey would hold on, and then I would tire out, and then it would be all for one for all for that last final headwind. But I managed to get a bit of a lead and hold it. And once I got that lead, I tried to button off a little bit so that I could, knowing that I had a second race coming up, and just try and save a little bit of energy, make sure I had 3 liters of water out there with me as well, almost 3 liters. And I didn't drink all of it in the race, but by the time I got to the beach, I had almost finished it, knowing that I had to replenish my glycogen, my carbs in the muscle as much as possible, and rehydrate as well. So I was just drinking all the way to the beach. And then as soon as I got to the beach, there was no mucking around. I pretty much jumped in the car. Wife took me straight to the hotel, our hotel, which was not 2 minutes down the road. Had a hot shower, to prevent getting cold like you do after a race. And then I immediately dug into some food. I think I had mango sorbet ice cream, non-dairy, so it's not a bad way to replenish some glycogen stores. And I had some salted chips, like just some plain chips, which had obviously carbohydrates from the chips and sodium. This wasn't planned. This is what was just in the hotel at the time. So I knew I needed to eat, but I knew I needed to get back to the venue as soon as possible. So like hot shower, new clothes so that I'm not sitting in my wet clothes, and then went straight back and found my OC1 and got my safety check for race 2. And so race 2, when you're lining up, you already know you're quite depleted from the first race, from that push with Casey. And I always knew the same as Paihia, Narad Bury was going to be another strong force, and a few others in there were going to push the pace. 2-man's always push the pace as well, so I knew it was going to be a challenge just based on experience of doing the double before. Narad had beaten me in Paihia, despite it being very close. Now, you have to take this second race even more cautiously, because you're already operating near zero in terms of muscle glycogen. So there's a big strategy here, and you would have seen it, is similar to the first one, but my strategy in this race was to gauge the lead. Well, actually, I lie, because I actually took the lead for the first lap, and I felt good. So I had a bit of a gap. I think Narada flipped. So at the time, after the first turn, Ash was in second, Narada was third, but he was making his comeback. And so I actually had a bit of space, but probably halfway through that race, I really felt my glycogen stores started to get pretty low, so there was not a lot of energy left in the muscle other than the fat stores, and any sugar that I was taking exogenously. So yeah, I knew I didn't have the ability to punch and go. So even though I had the lead, I didn't want to try too much to like increase it. and then really hit a slump. So Narada made his way back, and I knew he was going to make his way back. I could see him coming. And so what you have to do there is actually trust in your body. You got to average out that whole distance. Don't just go hard. My plan was to go easy, make sure I'm drinking, make sure I'm taking my gels, and when Narada comes, then I gotta hold on to him for as long as I can, because that's the baseline level that you need to win, right? You only need to win by 1 second at the end, or whatever it is. So, tactically, and there was no other way, basically I had to just stick to his tail, try and draft as much as I could. This is a strategy. This is an important strategy that you need to learn if you want to do this. It's not easy to stay there. For sure, it's not easy, but it gives you some focus of where you need to be to match your strong opponent and give you time to prepare for a finish. And that's basically what I did. And, I think Narada knew, that on that final lap, he knew I was going to try and go for it, especially when there was a bit of surf involved. There was that little bit of a downwind section on the turn. And then coming back home, there was actually a little bit of surf as well, even though it was a bit side. You could this is why I was kind of pushing quite far east, because I would push east and try and get on the bump and then wrap it and run it across. And I don't know. I think Narada could have won that. He definitely could have won that if he kept the hammer down around that turn. He stopped and had a drink and stuff, and let me take the lead at that last turning marker. But he was strong, and he could have definitely won that. But yeah, managed to get that one, not by much, but on the Kaiwaa Ares canoe. Love that canoe, but looking forward to the Vela coming in November. That'll be awesome. And V1 of choice was the 5 for SI. And but yeah, it was body was pretty, leading up to this, I didn't probably do as much mileage as I would have liked. Like, I would have liked to, in my training, to replicate this. I know Ash Roosendahl replicated it by doing a 15 in the morning and a 15 in the afternoon. The longest paddle I did leading into long distance nationals was 20 kilometers, a 2-hour paddle. And so that's why I was a little bit like, ooh, do I still have that? Am I ready? Am I conditioned enough to handle the double at that intensity? And I think sometimes, like I said, you just have to trust in your training, trust in your experience, and get out there and just enjoy it. The live footage was awesome. It's amazing for what, like Kingy Gilbert and multi-television. I think part of it was multi-television. Rahia, Seymour. It's not easy to run a live like that. Like, for anyone that complains about the coverage, or they missed this and this, that, try and go and do it at that level yourself. Like, it's not an easy operation, and a lot of these people are volunteering their time for this. There's not a whole lot of backing for it. So big ups to everyone that took part in getting the live feed for us, because it's amazing to be able to go back and watch the footage, or it's amazing for our whānau to watch live on Facebook or YouTube. And it helps to just grow awareness for the sport as well, I believe. So keep it up, I say. The more live coverage of any races we have, the better. It's cool. So yeah, hopefully I'm allowed to use it for future Instagram videos or YouTube videos, especially if it's of me. So I don't know, I always feel like there's some kind of contract or agreement. If you're filming someone, they should be allowed to use the footage, right? I don't know. And takeaways, just an awesome event. Big thank you to Wakama New Zealand. I think it was a very safe event, I believe. No incidents. And thank you to Gisborne, Turanganui, Kiwa, Tairāwhiti for the hosting of the event. I believe the next one's in Wellington. Porirua have the long distance nationals. What's next? New Zealand Wakama Sprint Nationals is the next local big event. Between now and then, there's the Molokai Hoi this weekend, which I want to do a video on about this week, and the Hawaii Nui in November. It's not far away, so I'm going to do videos about that because I won't be there, unfortunately. However, at the moment on trainlikeaking.com, we have a little promo, a discounted training plan, 12-week, specifically for the Sprint Nationals. Now, we have removed the land training components from this training plan just to focus on water only. And this is good for most paddlers because most paddlers don't have the time to double up. And I always say that water time is key. So 12-week plan at a discounted rate, water only plan. Pretty much you have 12 weeks right now to prepare for the Sprint National. So if you're looking for a training plan that will keep you honest, keep you focused, and you don't have to guess on what your workouts you're doing that day, head to Train Like a King and purchase the 12-week sprint plan. Pull it up here, and it's called the Ultimate Sprint 12-week promo. So discounted rate there, guys. Go and check it out, and you'll have 12 weeks of water only training for sprints in January. Not long to go. So thank you guys for listening, watching another Train Like a King podcast episode, and we'll catch you on the next one. Ciao, ciao.